the things I do to get ready for these videos. Oh my God, I swear, I'm just trying to be cute. Or at least look decent, goddamn. I just spent 4 minutes doing nothing. Absolutely nothing, girl. And then you gonna have the nerve. I know you is when you editing. You gonna have the nerve to be mad at you. I look crazy, but I'm cozy. Ooh. A word. Cause I feel like I can't see me. But I can see me though. I know I can see me because I'm looking right at me. Right? Right. But I couldn't see me though. Let's not have no rusty, dusty, crusty ass lips. What y'all having for dinner today? Ooh, back it up, bitch. Why are you all up in their face? Girl, this is 7 minutes of pure nothingness. 7 minutes. Is my face dry? Like, ooh. Whatever, dog. I should have on earrings. I need to go get some earrings. What is this case? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hey y'all, welcome and/or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. All right, y'all. So today we hopping straight into the case. And if you've been rocking with me for a little minute now, then you already know that we are going from the bridges to the dams of America in alphabetical order. So from Alabama to Wyoming. And today we are in South Dakota. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now, this is another one of those cases that got a lot going on. Now, it's not as many people and it's not as much going on as it was in Rhode Island's case, as the case I did for Rhode Island, but it's a lot going on nonetheless. So let's get into it. And we're gonna start with a woman named Tamara Rhea. She was born Tamara Darnell Burns on June 15th, 1964. In Lander, Wyoming. She was the oldest of her siblings, born to her parents, Donald and Bonnie Burns. And Donald and Bonnie, they had 3 daughters. It was Tamara, Raquel, and Holly. And Tammy was born and raised in Lander, Wyoming. This is where she spent her whole childhood and into and throughout her teenage years. She graduated from Lander High School in 1982, and she was super talented in volleyball, so much so that she ended up getting a scholarship to attend Central Wyoming College. And she spent 2 years in college before she decided to move from Lander, Wyoming to Casper. And Casper is about a 2.5 hour drive away from Lander. And while she was in Casper, to support herself, she started working at the Sweetbriar clothing store. And it never said how long she stayed in Casper, but it did say that she eventually left Casper and decided to move to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And eventually, Tammy decided that she wanted to leave Wyoming altogether. And so once she left Cheyenne, she moved to Sacramento, California. And this is where she would spend the next 4 years of her life. But throughout it all, with all this moving from city to city in Wyoming and then eventually moving to Sacramento, California, Tammy remained super tight with her family, especially her mama. She talked to her mama every single day, without fail. Now, I don't know if she talked to her sisters and her daddy on a daily basis, but she talked to them enough. They loved talking to each other and staying up to date on each other's lives, even though they was all grown and everybody was spread out all over the place. Because Bonnie, she was still in Wyoming. Raquel was in Montana. Tammy was now in California. I don't know where Holly was, but wherever she was, they never really wanted to feel far away from each other, right? And like most people do, when people that they care about move out of town, they like to visit each other as well. And one time while Tammy was on a trip to see her sister Raquel, who lived in Billings, Montana, Tammy was introduced to one of Raquel's co-workers, Brad Rhea. And when Brad and Tammy started talking, they quickly took a liking to one another. And eventually, a liking turned into a friendship, and a friendship turned into a relationship. And at some point, Tammy decided that she was going to leave California and move to Montana. And once she made it to Billings, she and Brad continued their relationship, and they would eventually end up getting married and starting a family together. And Tammy always knew that she wanted to be a hands-on, always present type of mom. And so when their baby girl Haley was born in 1993, Tammy quit working and she became a stay-at-home mom. And she did everything with baby Haley. All of the stuff that Tammy liked to do, camping, walking, gardening, decorating, you name it, she was now doing it with Haley by her side. But once Haley started school, Tammy really didn't have a reason to just be in the house all the time like that no more. And so she would get little part-time jobs here and there, just enough so that she had something to do and could kind of contribute to the household financially, but never too much to the point where she was going to be unavailable if Haley needed her. And if I'm not mistaken, she even got a job at Haley's school once. So yeah, she was always going to make sure that no job was interfering with her being a mom. And as Haley grew up, you could literally see more and more of Tammy in her, because not only did she participate in all of the things that her mom liked to do when she was a little girl, but as a young child in school, you could definitely see that she had inherited her mom's love for and talent in volleyball. And once she joined the volleyball team, you better believe that Tammy was there every step of the way. She was there to drop off and pick up Haley from practices, games, she was there. Any meetings, she was there. Fundraisers, she's doing them. Like, no holds bar on being a mom to Haley, basically. Now, as far as Brad goes, he was a good dad, but he just couldn't be as present as Tammy was because he was the main provider for the household. So he had to work, and he worked his ass off at Walmart, starting at an entry-level position and worked his way up to assistant manager. Now, the thing about it though is that once he got offered the job as an assistant manager, he had to make the choice. Well, he and Tammy had to make the choice to move because the position wasn't in Montana. The position was actually available in Pierre, South Dakota. And at first, Tammy was a little bit hesitant because Haley was like 10, 11, and she didn't want to just uproot her like that. But in the end, she did find that it would be better for them to move, especially with his new salary, and Haley could make new friends. Like, she was still young enough to be able to adjust to a move. And so they decided that they would go ahead and move to South Dakota. So they moved in August of 2004. And right away, it seems like everybody adjusted well to this new transition. Brad was enjoying being an assistant manager. Haley joined a couple of sports teams and made new friends. And Tammy had ended up getting a part-time job at Kmart that she was enjoying as well. And so for the most part, all is well, except for the fact that Brad's new job was very demanding. And so he was always at work. And it really didn't help that he was a bit of a workaholic. So he was prioritizing his work over his family. And that was an issue for Tammy. Because like I said, he was spending more and more time at work and less time at home. And in this short amount of time that Tammy was working at Kmart, she had started building friendships. And she started confiding in some of her coworkers about how she felt about Brad working all the time. And one of those co-workers was actually her manager, Brian Clark. And I'm just guessing that Brian was the type of manager who was always going to lend a listening ear to his employees. But by December of 2005, Brian's listening ear turned into an illicit affair. And not just on Tammy's part either, because Brian was also married with at least one child of his own. And so they was both doing dirt. So now fast forward to 2 months into the affair. It's February 2006 and Tammy ready to risk it all. But Brian is like, no, we need to keep this on the low. But Tammy was like, yeah, I'm divorcing Brad. And it was in those first couple of days of February that Tammy told Brad that she just wasn't happy no more. She told him that he spends way too much time at work. She's not happy in this relationship and that she thinks they should get a divorce. And she also told him that she was seeing somebody else. Now, she didn't say who she was seeing. She wouldn't tell him like who the person was, but she definitely said, look, I've been seeing somebody else and yeah, this just ain't working for me. I want a divorce. And truthfully, Brad shouldn't have been surprised by this divorce proposal because he and Tammy had been sleeping in separate rooms for months at this point. And it was just clearly evident that Tammy wasn't feeling it no more. Because on top of the fact that Brad was always at work, whenever he wasn't at work, he was very overbearing and controlling of Tammy. And so, yeah, he shouldn't have been surprised. But he wasn't happy and he kind of protested a little bit. But Tammy did say that she didn't want a divorce right away though. She said that she wanted to wait to start the divorce until Haley's school year ended. So that way she could adjust to the new living situation and new family dynamic over summer break and not while she was actively in school. So basically so that it wouldn't affect her schoolwork, right? Now, when Tammy brought all of this to Brad, like I said, he shouldn't have been surprised, but he was, and he was reluctant to agree. But eventually he did end up agreeing to basically divorce each other, but wait till Haley was done with this school year. And so once they came to an agreement, they sat Haley down because she's 11, 12 at this point, and they tell her that they are going to get a divorce, but they're going to wait until her school year is over. So she don't really got nothing to worry about. They're going to figure everything out, but they just wanted to let her know what was coming so that she wouldn't be surprised when it happened. And after this discussion with Haley, everybody pretty much went on about their day like normal. So now, February 7th, 2006 rolls around, and the day is as normal as a day could have been. Haley went to school, Brad went to work, and Tammy met up with Brian at the Farm Motel. She and Brian did what they did at the motel, and Tammy was back home with more than enough time to get ready for and go to Haley's basketball game. And after the game, Tammy took Haley on a little mother-daughter date. They went shopping and they went to grab some food before heading home. And once they got home, Haley got ready for school and she was in bed by 9 o'clock. So now the next morning on February 8th, 2006, this is when stuff is a little bit off. So Tammy's mom, Bonnie, is going about her regular morning routine, da-da-da and do-da-doing, and she waiting on a call from Tammy. Remember, Tammy called her mama every single day without fail. And as she continuously going on about her morning, she realized that Tammy ain't called her. And right away, Bonnie was like, oh, hell no, because my daughter calls me every single day faithfully. So her first instinct is to call Haley to see if she know where her mama at, because she knew that if anybody knew anything about Tammy, it would be Haley. And so she called Haley, and Haley told her that the last time she seen her mama was the night before, like right when she was about to go to bed at 9 o'clock. Now, mind you, Haley's at school. And it's 2006, so I don't know if Haley had a cell phone or not, but just imagine getting called down to the office. Like, if she ain't had no cell phone, imagine getting called down to the office and your grandma like, where your mama at? That's how you know that Bonnie knew something wasn't right. Because to call that girl at school. So after she talked to Haley, Bonnie like, you know what? Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I shouldn't have called Haley first. Let me call her job. Let me call Kmart to see if she's just at work, right? So Bonnie called Kmart and she talks to Brian Clark. Now, mind you, Bonnie don't know about the affair that Brian and Tammy are having. All she know is that Brian is a good friend of Tammy's and he's her manager at Kmart. And so Bonnie like, well, if she's supposed to be at work, Brian would know and he would know her schedule. So that's why she called Kmart and wanted to talk to Brian. And Brian told Bonnie that Tammy was scheduled to be to work at 10 o'clock that morning. However, she didn't show up. And so hearing this, Bonnie is getting a little bit concerned. And so she started calling around. I don't know who else she called, but she called around a little bit to see if anybody else had talked to her from or know where Tammy is. And when she found out that didn't nobody know where she was, she called Brian back and asked him to file a missing persons report on Tammy. And the reason that she didn't do it herself is because, remember, Bonnie is over here in Wyoming. Tammy lives in South Dakota, and Brian is also in South Dakota. So it would just make more sense for somebody who was in South Dakota as well to call to make the missing persons report. And Brian like, damn, her mama worried about where she at? I don't know where she at. Shit, I'm worried too. Because despite the fact that he want to keep him and Tammy on the hush, he do care about her. So he calls the police to report Tammy missing. And right away, being that he has to report Tammy as missing, Brian is already suspicious of her husband, Brad. And he tells the operator this on his 911 call.
Your name, please?
I'm Brian Clark.
Who's missing?
Tammy, Rhea.
Spell the last name?
R-E-A-Y. Foul play could be suspected here.
Okay, and why do you think that, sir?
Hopefully this is discreet, but me and her have been having an affair. Apparently her husband has found out about it.
Okay, what is his name?
Brad. R-E-A-Y, Rhea.
So right away, the police start investigating this missing persons report. And they send somebody to the school to talk to Haley. And they send another officer to Tammy and Brad's house. But when they get there, ain't nobody answering the door because Brad is at work. And they quickly find out that he is in fact at work. And so a police officer stays back at the house to kind of just monitor and surveillance just in case Tammy comes back. And then another officer goes to the Walmart to talk to Brad. So when they get to talking to Brad, Brad tells them that last night on the 7th, he was at home and Tammy wasn't there. And he said that at about 1 o'clock in the morning, he heard something outside. And when he looked, he saw Tammy's Durango, but he didn't see Tammy in her Durango. He saw another car pulling up and Tammy get in the car and the car rolled out. It drove off. And once he saw Tammy leave in this car, he got mad because that's mad disrespectful to be pulling up to my house and whisking my wife away, right? Now, granted, they wasn't supposed to be together or nothing, but damn, don't be disrespectful, right? And so Brad hopped in Tammy's Durango and started following the car. But he quickly lost pursuit because he said the Durango had some car issues or something. So he was on the side of the road for a little bit. And once he got the Durango back up and running, he just gave up and he went home. And Brad said that they could check with their department about him being on the side of the road that night because while he was stuck on the side of the road, a police officer came to check on him. So there should be some body footage somewhere of that. And they did in fact find that body cam footage, and Brad was in fact on the side of the road in Durango, and you know, his story kind of checked out. But anyway, so they like, all right, cool. They listen to his story and they like, okay, so you want to come with us to your house just in case Tammy comes back? And he like, okay, cool, sure. And so once they get Brad to the house, they like, do you mind if we search your house? And he was like, no. So he stood outside with one of the detectives while another detective went and searched the house. And inside the house, they didn't really find too much. They didn't see nothing crazy or whatever. But then they looked into the garage and they saw the Durango. And while they're looking around the garage, they see what appears to be blood droplets on the floor. And it looked like it might have dripped from like one of the door wells of the Durango. And so they like, ooh, that's not good. But then they opened the door to the car and they noticed a putrid, not putrid, they noticed a strong odor of cleaning product. And they never said what the cleaning product was, but in my mind, it was bleach. So upon seeing these blood droplets and smelling that strong odor of the cleaning agent, the police decide to back out and get a search warrant for the house because this was a consensual search. And so Brad could stop the search at any moment and they wouldn't be able to do nothing about it. So instead of him finding out that they found something, they was just like, okay, we're just gonna stop this search and get a search warrant because then he can't do nothing about us looking anywhere else. Okay, bet. So while they wait for the search warrant, they take Brad to the police station for questioning. And while Brad is being questioned, he does tell the police officers that he knew that Tammy was seeing somebody else, but he said he didn't know who the person was that she was seeing. And they ended up questioning him for 5 hours. And the whole 5 hours while he was there, they ended up conducting the search on his home. They got the search warrant and they conducted the search on his house. And like I told you, they had found those couple of blood spots in the garage. And so they swabbed those for testing. And they also noted that inside of the Durango appeared to have been cleaned immaculately. And even though there was nothing that 100% ironclad said that Brad had done anything to Tammy or that he was the cause of her disappearance, they ended up arresting Brad on suspicion of murder because where did blood spots come from and why the hell yo Durango smell like a bottle of bleach? So yeah, now while they got Brad in custody, they start to search for Tammy. And on the first day of the search, they didn't find anything. But on that second day, so I believe it's the 11th of February now, there was a pilot for the National Guard who was flying over the Oahe Dam and he saw something near the spillway. So he dipped down to see what it is, and it is in fact a body, and that body was identified as Tammy Rhea. She was completely nude and it was evident that she had been stabbed. Now obviously they still sent her body off for autopsy, and it was determined that she had been stabbed over 30 times and she had also had her throat cut. And during this autopsy, they did the whole exam. They did rectal and vaginal swabs. They took DNA samples, fingerprint scrapings, and blood samples as well. So like I said, the whole nine, they did it all. And while they do feel like Brad is 100% the culprit, they still do have to do their due diligence and eliminate all of the other potential suspects. And so naturally, the next suspect in line is her affair partner, Brian Clark. And when they talked to Brian, Brian said that he did in fact see Tammy on the 7th. He said that they had met up at the Farm Motel, you know, did they thing, but then they went their separate ways afterwards. And he said he don't know what Tammy did after, but he went home to his wife, and the two of them had ended up going to a community basketball game together. And he was like, yeah, there was a lot of people that I know who was there. You can ask any one of them. Ask all of them, as a matter of fact. But do not ask my wife, because I do not want her to find out about this affair. Please. And the police pretty much was like, I'm sorry, sucks for you, but we got to do our due diligence. We have to expose you, sir. So they go contact his wife. And she says that, yes, they did in fact go to that basketball game that day. He was there with her the whole time. He didn't leave. And then after that, they went home, went to sleep, whatever. But she did say that she didn't sleep in the bed with Brian that night. She said that she had slept in the recliner because she be having back problems, and sometimes the recliner helps her with her back problems. And so she didn't sleep where he was at. So she don't know if he left the house or not. And so now he don't really have an alibi for the rest of that night, for real, for real. So now they got two people who is plausible suspects for this crime, and they got to figure out which one is the real one. And just as they trying to figure stuff out, the Attorney General office end up getting 4 letters that point in the direction of one clear suspect. And these letters allegedly came from the suspect's cousin. So the writer of these letters said that their cousin told them that their cousin killed Tammy. He said that the cousin said he messed up real bad and he left/lost a condom in Tammy's rectum. Now, the letter said it in much more of a harsh way than that. And allegedly, the writer's cousin is Brian Clark. Now, I already told you that they did a full autopsy on Tammy's body, and they even did the rectal swabs. However, when they did the rectal swabs, they didn't see anything foreign. But just in case this letter was really hitting on something, they decided that they was going to have Tammy's body autopsied a second time, just in case. And during that second autopsy, they, just for lack of better terms, went a little deeper into her rectum, and they did in fact find a condom. And the condom was indeed filled with biological material, but the biological material was too degraded to get a hit on. So they couldn't tell who the fluid had come from. But the fact that this letter led them to this discovery, they had to take this letter seriously. So they bring Brian in for more questioning. And Brian said he don't know what the hell they talking about. He has no idea what they talking about, right? But lucky for Brian, the detectives knew that Brian wouldn't know what the hell they was talking about. They only brought him in for more questioning to cover all their bases, right? And the reason that they knew that Brian wouldn't know what the hell they was talking about was because while Brad was in jail on that suspicion of murder, remember? While Brad was in jail, they searched his house for a second time. And during this second search, in Brad's closet, they found a little mini tape recorder. And they listened to the tape that was in this tape recorder. And what they heard was Tammy. So it appears as though at some point Tammy had called Brian while he was at work. And when she called him, she asked to speak to Brian Clark. And you could hear Tammy telling Brian how much she loved him and how she just needed to hear his voice, because at some point during the week, Brad had left some flowers and a card in Tammy's car. And she was just telling Brian, like, he just don't get it. He don't understand. Like, I'm not going back, yada, yada, yada. I love you, da, 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 da. I just need to hear your voice, blank, 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 right? So they listening to this and they like, well, I know damn well Tammy wasn't in his room talking to Brian, right? And so he either put this in her car or he had this in her room somewhere. But we found it in his closet. And we're pretty sure that he listened to this tape. And so it was at that point when they listened to Tammy say Brian Clark's name on that tape recording, they knew that Brad knew who Tammy was having an affair with. And they knew that he had lied to them when he said he had no idea. So because he had lied to them, they had wanted to start monitoring his phone calls in jail and any kind of interactions that he had. And so they was monitoring his calls and his visits. And they learned that Brad, he talked to a couple of people, but he had talked to one person way more than he talked to anybody else. And that was his twin brother, Brett. And during one of their visits at the jail, the guards noticed that Brett was writing something down, and they notified the police. And later on that day, after he left his visit with his brother, he was stopped by a patrol car in Spearhead, South Dakota. And this was under the guise as a routine traffic stop, right? But they had already obtained a search warrant for his car prior to this stop, right? Based off of what they found out from the prison guards. And during the search of Brett's car, they found these little notebooks that essentially had the rough drafts to the 4 letters that was sent to the Attorney General's office. And when they pressed him on this, Brett gave it up right away. He said that his brother Brad had instructed him what to write and when and where to send these letters to. And it was the day after they found these rough drafts in Brett's car that the Attorney General's office received the 4 letters. So they had already knew what was going on before the Attorney General's office got the letters. And then at some point, I can't remember if this happened prior to the AGO getting the letters or if it happened after, but they had ended up intercepting one of the letters that Brad had written to Brett. And in that letter, Brad was talking about some good fishing spots that he knew Brett could go to, right? And they knew that this was code for something. And so the investigators went to this good fishing spot, and it is there that they found a trash bag full of evidence. There was bedding, clothes, a tarp, and a knife. And all of this was bloody. And so naturally, this was all sent off for testing. And when the blood tests came back, it all came back as Tammy's blood. And so now, instead of Brad being in jail just on suspicion of murder, they now charged Brad with Tammy's murder. And Brad, for whatever reason, decided that it was in his best interest to take this to trial. And the trial started just about a year later in January of 2007. And the prosecution's argument was pretty much that Brad was not excited about the divorce at all. And once Tammy told him that she was seeing somebody else, he was determined to find out who that person was. And that's why he planted a tape recorder somewhere where he knew that Tammy would be talking. And once he found out who Tammy was having an affair with, he set his plan in motion. And he had it in his mind that he was going to kill Tammy and frame her new lover. And he even went so far as to try to make it a clean crime scene, because he put tarp on Tammy's bed, and then he put sheets, and I think it was a couple layers of sheets or something like that, so that Tammy wouldn't know that she was laying on a tarp. And once he killed Tammy, he wrapped her body up and disposed of her where she was found. And then he tried to frame Brian. The prosecution ended up calling a couple of witnesses to testify for them. And one of those witnesses was his brother, Brett. And Brett gave it all up on the stand. And he gave his testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence. And I don't know what he ended up being charged with, but I know that he gave his testimony to either not have any jail time or have a significantly reduced sentence. They also called Tammy's mom to the stand, as well as Tammy and Brad's daughter, Haley, to the stand. And Haley got on the stand and she told exactly what she remembered from that night. And Haley said that the day of the 7th was normal, but that night when she went to sleep, she woke up to something. She said she don't remember what woke her up, but she said that when she woke up, her dad was standing in her doorway holding a bunch of clothes. And she was like, "What is you doing?" And he dropped the clothes and he was like, "Oh, nothing, honey." And he came and laid with her until she went back to sleep. And she said that she went back to sleep pretty quickly. So that was weird, but okay, whatever that. But then she woke up on the morning of the 8th, and usually her mama is up, getting ready, doing whatever. And this particular morning, her mama was nowhere in sight. And when she asked her dad, initially when she asked her dad where her mama was, he said that she was in her room. And so Haley goes to her mom's room and she like, yeah, nah, something is off, because her mama's bed wasn't made up. Her mama's purse was there and her mama's cell phone was there, but there was no sign of her mom. And so Haley go back to her daddy and was like, Well, mom's not in her room and her bed not made. That's weird because mom always makes her bed. And her dad was like, oh, honey, she has a boyfriend. She probably at his house. And Haley thought that was kind of strange because if Tammy had a boyfriend, like a new boyfriend that she was, openly with, Haley would have knew about it. And so she was like, okay. So her dad takes her to school that day. And on the ride to school, her dad tells her, like, look, don't tell nobody about your mama boyfriend or her being gone last night because it's personal. Right? So she go to school and then she ended up getting a call from her grandma, like, girl, where your mama at? So now the prosecution rests and it's the defense's turn. And Brad had a surprise for everyone. Okay? Because Brad's defense was that he did not kill Tammy, but actually Haley killed Tammy. So he took the stand in his own defense, and this is what he said happened. He said that the day of the 7th, completely normal, but that night he woke up to the sound of the cat. And when he woke up, he saw Haley standing over her mama with a knife. And he said that she was either in a catatonic state or in shock. He couldn't tell you which one, but she was like out of it. And he like, Haley, what have you done? And she didn't move. She didn't do nothing. She just standing there with a knife, right? She was damn near not even conscious at this point, according to Brad. And he said that he went into protector mode and he grabbed the knife. He cleaned Haley up. He redressed her and put her back in the bed. And he said that she didn't wake up until he was done. And that's why when she woke up, he had them clothes in his hand because they was her clothes that he was cleaning up from when she had just killed her mama. And he said that when she went back to sleep, he did in fact dispose of Tammy's body. He did place the condom in her rectum and he did try to frame Brian for it, but it was all in an attempt to protect Haley from what she had done. And once the defense rested, they handed it over to the jury. And the jury deliberated and they decided that Brad was one lying motherfucker and that he was guilty as charged. And on March 6, 2007, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And he ended up completing that sentence on February 18th, 2024, when he died in the prison infirmary. It didn't say what he died from, but he died. And let me tell you something. I was so curious when I was researching this case because at first it wasn't saying, I couldn't find out how this happened, right? I was wondering how Brad got a used condom, right? Because he wouldn't have had his biological material in the condom because that just wouldn't have been smart, right? And I guess we can all agree that Brad wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, but he wouldn't have put his material in the condom, right? And he was so sure that Brian was going to get caught up, right? So it had to have been Brian's biological material. And come to find out, Brian said that he would often just toss him out the window, at some point on his ride home. And so Brad had to have been stalking Brian to get that condom, no? And pick it up off the side of the road. That's nasty. Anyway, y'all, that is all I have for today's case. Let me know what y'all thought about it down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. See, when I write this stuff, it be sounding like a good idea, but now that I'm thinking about trees to dams, are dams not made of trees? She was the oldest of 3 girls born to her parents, Donnie and Bonnie. No. Oh, well, his name Donald. Now, Bonnie, no, what? That's her mama. But throughout all this moving across, what am I saying? And they would eventually ended up, because on top of the fact that Brad, who is Brad? Brad is the husband. Brad already is suspicious of her husband. No, Brad is the husband. And while in Brad's closet,